Hey everybody, it's Cam. I did an MSNBC hit on Saturday night on Weekend Primetime. I love the co-host there. I have a great time on that show. And I wanted to share it with you because we talked about some really interesting stuff. They partnered me with Dr. Basil Smikle, who they have put me on with several times now. I'm going to throw a picture on screen right now of 3 different instances of the two of us sitting together. And you can tell we're besties. I fucking love that guy. We sang Doe a Deer, a Female Deer from Sound of Music together backstage or whatever you want to call it while we were getting mic'd up. And we just have a blast together. We will always be friends, and I hope they keep pairing us up as a team. But we talked about Ghislaine Maxwell and whether her saying that Donald Trump is actually a super nice guy and totally not culpable in anything will work with a lot of the MAGA people who are really upset about the Epstein files. And then we talked about how Democrats are currently facing absolute devastation in voter registration. So kick back, leave a comment down below of how proud you are of me for actually wearing a fucking suit this time, and enjoy some clips from $MSNBC, which is now going to be called MS Now in a rebrand that I will not comment on for professional reasons. Let's have a look.
Trump's approval ratings are in the toilet. But Democrats may be in big trouble, too, especially with the midterms already looming. An eye-opening report from the New York Times reveals the party has been absolutely hemorrhaging voters. In fact, of the 30 states that track voter registration by political party, Democrats lost ground to Republicans in every one of them from 2020 to 2024. The Times reports that 4 years swing toward the Republicans adds up to 4.5 million voters, a deep political hole that could take years for Democrats to climb themselves out from. Basil and Cameron are still here at the table with us. Cameron, I'm going to go to you first. What the heck are the Democrats doing wrong?
I was actively encouraging a lot of other Zoomers to vote for Kamala Harris. And when I was talking to people, knocking doors, meeting with organizers, despite reading all of the campaign literature and following the social media and everything, I could not very clearly explain what I was telling people to vote for. I could tell them what I was telling people to vote against. But at this point, running elections on who we need to be voting to stop and running on maintaining some sort of status quo that isn't working for people, it is so unbelievable that anybody thinks that that could be effective. You look at the mayoral race in New York City, I talk about it a lot, but also I talk about young people, and Mamdani was able to get an insane amount of youth turnout, so we have to talk about it. Andrew Cuomo was running for mayor on I'm a familiar face, and I'm not the scary Muslim socialist. Zoran, whether you love him or hate him, you can explain in 3 to 5 points what he was asking you to vote for. So you look at something like that and you say, okay, when somebody was casting their ballot for him, they had an idea of what was going to change because of the ballot that they cast. Whereas so many Democrats in the party right now, especially in the establishment, are just saying, look how awful this authoritarianism is. We ought to stop that. Meanwhile, they are failing to give us any reason to believe that they can meet that moment in the first place. We do not feel like an opposition party. So if you're running on being an opposition party and you have nothing to show for it for the past 2 years, I don't understand how they expect voters to respond to that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, you have to want something. And I always said, anger only gets you to 49%. You have to actually embrace your candidate to get to the 51%, which is what you're talking about with Mamdani. He created a movement around his candidacy. You know, one of the first things that my mentor told me when I got in this business 30 years ago was that every movement becomes an institution. And the movement that encouraged me to get into Democratic politics back in the Jesse Jackson era and Rainbow Push, I think a lot of younger voters view us as the institution now, and I understand that. I mean, I'm still think I'm a fairly young guy, but
you are with that jacket on. That's definitely not very. Thank you. Not a lot of people can pull that off. I was going to say that's a lot of style.
I went to Columbia, he teaches at Columbia. People think that we were roommates.
But but what ends up happening is that people, like, one of the things that I think has become an issue is that people like me need to know when to step aside, because there are a lot of voters that view the party as too old, too entrenched, immovable, and this is a massive problem.
Can you hit up Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and maybe a few?
There are a lot more. There are a lot more names that need to be mentioned, but I would tell you, it's a massive problem that I think the Democrats do need to correct very, very soon. I would also say one other quick thing, and I have said this before. Presidential campaigns are about creating social political movements around your candidacy. Joe Biden wasn't really that. In many ways, he was to be a managerial president. I don't mean that in a pejorative.
Or like a technocrat.
Well, just someone to get us through a period.
Placeholder.
Right. Somebody to just get us over the hump of COVID. Yeah. And I think what needed to happen was some kind of movement candidacy to come after that. Yeah. And I don't think, even though I was really engaged and very happy about Kamala's candidacy, those 107 days were not enough.
Yeah.
Kevin, you're an experienced organizer among young voters, and you have led and worked on voter registration with the Parkland campaign. What I find most disturbing for Democrats here is that they are not attracting voters under 30 the way that the Democratic Party normally does and relies on those voters. What specifically do you see among your peer group when it comes to the Democrats and their messaging and policies?
Well, I think there is, of course, a giant gender divide because so much of the rightward shift with Gen Z is powered by specifically men. But also I see young people not desperate for young candidates. I mean, so many of the young people I know who don't get excited about the Democratic Party do get excited about Bernie Sanders, one of the oldest guys in the entire world, because he is presenting them with ideas that give them something that makes them feel like they're fighting and makes them feel like we're charting a path forwards. But right now, if I were telling somebody, hey, register to vote with the Democratic Party, and they ask me, what does it mean to be a Democrat? What will I be fighting for? I don't really know, because the Democratic Party is too busy tying its own shoelaces together on a variety of issues, whether that is who to endorse within the party, whether that's progressives and moderates fighting each other instead of building bridges, or if it's something like Pete Buttigieg and Palestine. So recently, Pete Buttigieg, who is running a very early campaign for 2028 to be the president of the United States, he was asked about Palestine and gave an answer that I actually wrote down because it reminded me of molasses spilling out of somebody's mouth. He said, I think that's a profound question that arouses, which is a very good vocab word, by the way, a lot of the biggest problems that have happened with Israel's right to survival in the diplomatic scene. Say that it's bad. Right. Say that it's bad.
Well, okay, hold on. To that point, about saying that it's bad.
Oh, is this the
I don't know if you're going to ask about this or not. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but since you brought this up, let me play for you what Catherine Clark said about the Gaza issue, and then we'll get your thoughts to it. Take a listen.
We each have to continue to have an open heart about how we do this, how we do it effectively, and how we take action in time to make a difference. Whether that is stopping the starvation and genocide and destruction of Gaza, or whether that means we are working together to stop the redistricting.
All right, so that was House Minority Whip Catherine Clark, comes out, calls it a genocide, speaks clearly about what needs to happen to stop it. Then after the backlash that she said the word genocide, which Israeli human rights organizations have called, every major international human rights organization is saying is happening in Gaza, she said, whoa, I didn't mean to suggest that Israel's committing a genocide, and she walked it back. And so to your point about values and what you're fighting for and what you're saying, it is hard for young Democrats, certainly people in New York City, watching somebody like Zohran Mamdani speak with such moral clarity about the situation in Gaza, and then watch the Democratic leadership, whether it's Pete Buttigieg or Catherine Clark, doing what they're doing.
Listen, I don't know how many times I've said this in my life, but I'm saying it in all caps right now. The Pod Save America bros were right. Okay, the 2028 nominee is going to be somebody who's not taking money from AIPAC. It's going to be somebody who is able to speak about this without tripping over themselves. And it's going to be someone whose values reflect that of the voters. People are done with this. And I don't want to act as though people in the United States of America are single-issue Palestine voters, because of course that is not the case, as we have seen in action. But it's just one of those situations where the Democratic Party has the opportunity to get behind something that morally compels people. And when people feel morally compelled, that can move them to the ballot box. That can get them to take action. When you are providing them no opportunity to feel like they're part of something that is of any substantive value other than, oh, we might give you a couple $1,000s to buy a starter home, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell other young people other than, hey, you should be super woke like I am.
Cameron, it's hard for a lot of people to feel sad about, something tough happening to John Bolton. A lot of concern and criticism of his work across 2 different administrations, his general hawkishness. But why would you explain to someone that they should care about what we saw unfold yesterday?
Well, I mean, if you had told me when I was a child that I would one day be defending John Bolton, I would have said, who the hell is that? I have no idea who you're talking about.
Fair enough.
But listen, there were a lot of people when Trump was running again who were trying to paint a potential second Trump term as something that was actually going to be a little bit less aggressive, while a lot of folks were saying, no, Trump is coming in for revenge. Trump is going to be targeting the people who he perceives as his enemies, and he is going to use his office basically just to go after his enemies. He's going to try to punish people because Trump loves being a really good friend to have. Like when he's courting Republicans to vote for his bill and he's handing them merch and telling them that they're BFFs. And he really likes to be a terrible enemy. So this Bolton stuff is just the beginning of what will be a much more slippery slope of Trump just going after people and trying to strong arm whoever he can to scare anyone who might get in his way.
Basil, we know that Trump cares a lot about what the press writ large says about him, but especially right-wing influencers, the administration, from cabinet secretaries reaching out to certain, conspiracy theorists and bringing them on trips abroad like Pete Hegseth did, to Donald Trump and the West Wing's courting of these activists. When Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony or her interview with Todd Blanche leaked, we have some of the reaction from different right-wing figures, and they were excited. They said that Marjorie Taylor Greene, we have a tweet from her where she said, this basically vindicates him. Ghislaine Maxwell says President Trump was never inappropriate with anyone and was a perfect gentleman in all respects. Do you think that this is going to be enough momentum from the base to help smooth over the Epstein scandal and Donald Trump's long relationship and friendship with Epstein?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you listen to the interview, it sounds like in the questioning, she was being led to have to kind of comment the way that she did, to praise him in the way that she did, so that they could elicit the kind of responses that would help smooth the path for him. I do think if you're, probably a member of Congress where you're going to have to interact with him on a regular basis, this is going to give you enough to be able to feel confident being in his presence and go out and defend him. But the folks that are deeply embedded in these conspiracy theories that, had caused this conversation to take place in the first place, I don't know that it actually solves the issue for them, quite frankly. The question then becomes whether or not, how much longer, with everything that's dropped, how much longer can it kind of stay afloat? I don't know that Democrats want to continue to push that. I'm just not sure that they should be in a position to do it. But I don't know that it really solves the issue for them.
I think the Maxwell stuff is definitely enough to feed the Charlie Kirks and Benny Johnsons, who just kind of haplessly are meat puppets for the Trump administration and will say whatever they want. But the alternative media voices, the people who really powered Trump's second campaign and made a lot of individuals who are maybe a little sick of him warm up to this idea, this isn't enough for them. I mean, a buddy of mine put this really well. You've got Maxwell, who is a serial perjurer, convicted sex trafficker of children, saying the president, who can grant her freedom, is actually just the sweetest and an upstanding gentleman. And she says this, of course, to his personal attorney. I don't think that a lot of the folks who were being friendly with Trump in this next campaign, I don't think they're going to buy it. I think that they're still going to apply pressure on this because so much of Trump's power was derived, as you had said, from these conspiratorial-minded people, and Epstein is the ultimate conspiracy.